My name is Gary. I work as an illustrator and designer in Sligo. My background is architecture. I studied in Dublin and worked in London for about 3 years, up until 2 years ago. And I felt a little bit like this guy. This isn't one of my drawings, but I really liked it. So he's like a pop-out kind of generic office worker, which is what I was. And I decided I'd leave London to become an illustrator. And when I told my friends that I was leaving London to pursue or to further my career in Sligo and told them that it was in the west of Ireland, I could just see in their minds they were picturing Father Ted. So I just want to talk to you about mistakes. A little bit unrelated. There we go, that's better, isn't it? Okay, so mistakes. Mistakes are great. I feel a little bit like this dog right now. This has gone into autoplay, slideshow. This is terrible. This is an awful mistake, but it's quite fitting, isn't it? So I feel a little bit like that dog, and the reason I do is because I spend all day in my studio drawing, and that's what I love to do, but I see very few people throughout the day. So this is kind of like Christmas, seeing 70 people in one place at once. So mistakes are these great things that we all make. Some of us make less than others, and I would encourage people to make mistakes as often as you possibly can, because by making mistakes is how you really learn. But unfortunately, we become very safe as we get older, and we start to learn systems that work for us in terms of work or life or whatever it happens to be. You learn how something works, and then you follow that every single time. It's a little bit boring, but it's very safe. Pablo Picasso, he said that all children are born artists, and the problem is remaining that way as they grow up, or paraphrasing. But so I heard this really great story about this little kid, and she loved to draw, and she never did her work in school. She just loved drawing. That was her thing. And it used to really annoy her teachers. And one day, the kid was drawing away, drawing on her desk. The teacher was teaching French or English or maths or something she was not interested in. And she spotted the kid, and she walked over to her and she said, "What are you drawing?" And the kid just looked up and went, "God." To which the teacher replied, "Nobody knows what God looks like." And the kid just looked back at her and said, "They will in a minute." So the good thing about this was she wasn't afraid to give it a go, even if she was going to get it wrong. And that's something that we can all kind of learn a little bit from. So it's something that we can all learn a little bit from. If you're not prepared to fail at something, if you're not prepared to get something wrong, you'll never create anything original. And that goes for life or your work. So you have to try things. Now let's look at a couple of examples of things that were tried and gotten wrong, but actually ended up being fantastic discoveries. Like penicillin was discovered by accident. Not the heart, that wasn't discovered by accident, but pacemakers, the technology to make those function was an accident. Plastic, microwaves, inkjet printers, cornflakes. Now, having said this, and before I get to the next slide, some things will always just be a mistake and should never be done. And so I really think this is never going to work for anybody, so please don't do it. So back to me, because I want to talk about myself a little bit more. I was in London, and I moved back to Sligo, which is a remote location, obviously. And I'll just organize these. You can dwell on that for a minute. So I moved back to Sligo, which looks a lot like that. And a friend of mine came to me and he said, "I run a blog and I'd love if you'd do a drawing, an illustration for the blog." And I thought, yeah, absolutely, this is what I do now. I would love to do your illustration. And he said, "Okay, great. I want a boy with red hair cycling a bike that looks like a unicorn over a rainbow." So I said, okay. And I did that for him. And he was very happy with it. And when it came to the kind of the money changing hands thing, I wasn't really expecting anything because I was doing it for experience. And he said, look, I can't give you any money. And I said, that's totally fine. He said, but I'm sponsored by a shoes company. I'll give you a pair of shoes, brand new, still in the box. I thought, great, free pair of shoes. And he ran upstairs and he got this box and he brought it down to me. And it was really exciting. I was opening it up and I was very excited to see what type of shoes I was getting. And I discovered there's a pair of sandals inside. And I thought I have made a huge mistake. That's literally the last funny slide. Everything else is pie charts and graphs. So I thought to myself, right, if I want to turn this hobby of mine into a livelihood, I have to treat it like a business. And I have to kind of take it a bit more seriously. And treating something like a business was something I'd understood because I worked in architectural offices. And I thought, what do you do when you run a business? You get up early every day and you go to a place and you do work. So I bought myself two things. Well, I rented one of them. I got an alarm clock and I rented an office. And I decided I'd get up early every single day and I would go to work. Even if there's no work on, I would just go in and do stuff. And I started out just drawing and learning how to use different programs, how to get my hand drawings onto a computer. And I started building a website and I made a social media and I started getting a little bit of a following. You can follow me if you want on Instagram, at Gary Reddin. If anybody's not on Instagram, it's very easy to download. So I started doing this stuff, and eventually people came to me and started asking me for artwork for their businesses. This is the very first logo I ever created. These were package designs. More packaging. I did a press release for a shop. Then I did that shop front. And then, what did we do then? Oh, t-shirt design. So I did loads of competitions online just because sometimes I'd run out of ideas of what to do myself. So I started just looking online and doing competitions for t-shirts. And yeah, you just see a lot of this stuff. Then I got into t-shirts in a big way. Oh, if anybody speaks Irish or doesn't speak Irish, this means wet. Fluck is the Irish word for wet. So I made this, it was a little screen print, and then I built a screen print machine for building t-shirts. I built it on a weekend, and there's a t-shirt being printed, and there's loads of t-shirts. I started doing portraits just of things that I liked. Again, it was a point in the office where you're not getting a whole lot of work in because you're just starting out, but you're in there from 8 o'clock in the morning and you had nothing else to do, so I just started doing whatever I wanted, which was great. And just did more portraits, Seamus Heaney, and then just a random girl. And then I started getting commissioned to do work. And something that I'd just like to stress at this point is that the only reason this work was coming into me and the only reason I was getting this work was because I was producing work. I was making stuff all the time, constantly, just constantly making. I started doing branding, which was a really interesting exercise and something I learned a lot about. All the time I was drawing stuff from my surroundings. So I'm from Strandhill, which is a little beach in Sligo. And this was the first date in Strandhill. And that's Sligo town. This was a screen printed poster for a surf film festival, screen printed in Dublin. This is something I wanted to stop and talk about for a moment. This is branding, and it's something I didn't really understand until I started working for myself. So if you are a creative person and you're in the creative field at all, branding is a really interesting thing, and it's something that a lot of people can't do. If you can imagine you are a dentist or an accountant or a doctor, or maybe some of you are, and there's nothing wrong with those professions, they're all very, very good. But sometimes they might lack a little bit of imagination. Now, I've probably picked really bad ones because they're quite imaginative. But certain professions lack a certain amount of imagination. Whereas if you go to a creative person and say, can you give this bin a personality? The creative person will go, absolutely, no problem. And that's what I discovered one of my strengths was I could give any business a personality and something that matched that business. So with this, it was a woman in Strandhill who was opening a bakery. And she had a really great sense of humor, and so did her product. So we decided we'd merge a cupcake with a sheep. and we make the Black Sheep Bakery. I went on to do some photography, branding. We're missing a couple of slides. Oh no, yep. This is just a little bit more, some branding exercises, drink company, a beer shop in London. I'd never got to sample their products, which I was really disappointed about. At the same time, I kept doing all of my own work and kept working away while I was doing these branding projects. These were just a little series of prints I did myself for the West of Ireland, this is how I see the West of Ireland. It's quite grey and wet, but very, very beautiful. These were poets I extracted and brought them into modern day. So you've got W.B. Yeats, James Joyce, and Samuel Beckett. And these were picked up by Penguin book publishers, because I think they are Joyce's publisher. And they tweeted them out to about, 900,000 people. So that was great exposure. But again, I just did these off my own bat. And nobody commissioned me to do this sort of work. So I started doing exhibitions once I had enough work. After about a year, I had enough work that I could go and travel around and just show people, show off, basically. So at that time, about a year ago, I was working quite a lot, and I made this little video just to represent how much I did, but how much I really, really enjoyed it. I love doing this stuff. I discovered about a year ago that doing this freelance style type of work, it's going to come in waves. So there were times when there's just no work in the office. And in your first year, that's always going to happen. So about a year ago to around this exact time, I had a 3-week period with nothing to do. So I just made up a project and I pretended I was the client. I'm a terrible client. I pretended I was the client and I was the worker. And I gave myself the task of producing 6 Christmas cards, but I wanted to make it within 3 weeks, do a rollout marketing strategy, do a promotional video, which I brought, but it's not playing, but that's okay. We'll get over it. And I did like a little storyboard for it. So I took 3 weeks and I made this whole project and I put it all together. And I got like 1,000 cards printed, and I thought to myself, that's more than enough. If I sell 10, I'd be happy. So I got it all done. I spoke to a couple of friends who worked in retail, and I did some wholesale prices and put them out. I did a market in Dublin. I built a promotional video, which I sent out as well. And I put it out through all my social media. And within a week, I had sold everything, and I couldn't get anything else printed. And it made the demand for them really, really high. So I'd kind of made enough for 2 months almost within that week, which was great. And off the back of that was just a project that I just invented. Off the back of that, a publisher in the UK contacted me, and I was doing a study on beauty at the time. So I was just painting and trying to come up with different ways and different means of painting the same thing. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize was that beauty was kind of held within the imperfections. So I wanted all the paintings to kind of come across a little bit unfinished or a little bit imperfect. And the publisher saw this in the UK and said, we really, really want to buy the large piece here to put on a book cover. And I said, yes, of course. That's what I do. Shortly after this, about a month later, a company in Baltimore contacted me through the internet, and they said, Gary, we'd love you to animate a promotional video for us. And I emailed them back and I said, hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for getting in touch, but I don't do animation. I can pass you on to somebody. And they said, well, who did your animation for your Christmas cards? And I said, oh, that was me. And they said, okay, this is our budget. We'd like you to do an animation. The budget was about 10 times more than anything I've ever worked with before. So I looked at my hand. I was speaking to them on the phone, and I stopped talking and just looked at my hand for like about a minute. And then I looked back and I was like, yes, I'll do it. I didn't want to come across desperate. So having done that, it took about 2 months to run through that project, and it was great. It was a great project to do. What it did was it paid me for about 6 months, which allowed me to keep operating and keep working as kind of a creative person in the west of Ireland. Now, one thing, and I'll just finish on this, is that education is a really interesting thing. Is anybody here been educated outside of Ireland, even briefly? Anybody at all went to school anywhere else? Oh, everybody. Right. Great. Okay, I went to school for a while in France. And I'm sure you can all correct me on this if I'm wrong, but what I learned about education between Ireland and France was they seem to prioritize very, very similar things. So in the top kind of tier of education was maths and languages. And that's fine, because maths and languages are great and they're really necessary. But the tiers kind of go down, and you go down through the sciences, and you know what is in the bottom tier is arts. And that's fine as well, but some people much prefer arts to maths and languages. So what this said to me was that we're really, through our education, we're prioritizing the things that we really understand and that are tangible and safe. And it means from those you can move into a very safe career, and you can earn a safe amount of money, and it's all bankable. But what we're doing actively is almost discouraging people from doing arts, whether it's dancing or artwork or drawing or music. We're kind of discouraging that because it's not bankable. You can't have a bankable career on it, per se. So what I'd like to just finish on that is it's a fantastic time to be a creative person because everybody's being encouraged to do safe jobs. If you step outside that and you do something that isn't as safe, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of money out there for you, because not everybody can give a bin a personality or a business. So thanks very much for listening to me. And yeah, if you want to talk afterwards, just come and find me. All right. Thank you.